The October rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Meridian Tech's 32nd floor conference room, each droplet racing down the glass like tears on a giant's face. Sarah Chen adjusted her second-hand blazer for the third time, acutely aware of the frayed edge near the left pocket that she'd tried to fix with clear nail polish that morning. Around the mahogany table sat 12 executives, their designer suits worth more than her annual rent in Queens. Miss Chen. Richard Hawthorne's voice cut through the room like a scalpel through tissue. The CEO of Meridian Tech leaned back in his Italian leather chair, his gray eyes cold as the rain outside. I believe you had some concerns about our new software rollout. Sarah's throat felt like sandpaper, but she forced herself to stand. She'd rehearsed this presentation 100 times in her studio apartment, practicing in front of the cracked mirror she'd found on Craigslist. Her laptop, a 5-year-old model held together with duct tape and prayer, hummed anxiously as she connected it to the projector. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Hawthorne," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've been with the quality assurance team for 3 years, and I've identified several critical vulnerabilities in the new update that could expose our clients' financial data." "Excuse me," interrupted Victoria Ashworth, the chief technology officer, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone screen. "Aren't you the intern who keeps sending those alarmist emails?" "I'm not an intern," Sarah replied quietly. "I'm a junior QA analyst." "Right." Victoria's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The one who takes the subway." A few chuckles rippled around the table. Sarah's cheeks burned, but she pressed on. "If we could focus on slide 3, you'll see the encryption protocol has a fundamental flaw." "Miss Chen." Hawthorne's voice was honey poured over broken glass. "How long have you been working in tech?" 3 years at Meridian, sir. 5 years total, including my time at... And your degree is from... where exactly? Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she clicked to the next slide. City College of New York. But if we could please look at the data? City College. Hawthorne repeated the words like he was tasting something bitter. Not MIT, not Stanford, not even NYU. He looked around the table, sharing knowing glances with his executives. "Tell me, Miss Chen, how much do you make a year?" The question hit her like a physical blow. "I don't see how that's relevant to the security vulnerabilities." "Humor me." Sarah's mouth went dry. Around the table, executives leaned forward like vultures sensing weakness. 42,000, she said quietly. 42,000, Hawthorne repeated louder this time. "Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Chen makes $42,000 a year. I spend more than that on my weekend car." More laughter. Crueler this time. "And yet she presumes to tell us, people who've built billion-dollar portfolios, who've graduated from the finest institutions, who've shaped the tech industry, that we don't understand our own product." "That's not what I'm saying," Sarah protested, her voice growing stronger with desperation. "The vulnerability is real. If hackers discover it, they could access millions of credit card numbers, social security." Hawthorne stood abruptly, his 6'3" frame towering over the room. "Miss Chen, let me explain something to you about how the world works." He walked slowly around the table, each step deliberate, predatory. "Opinions are like luxury cars. Not everyone can afford to have one. You take public transportation to a job that pays less than what I tip my yacht crew. You live in..." He glanced at a paper in front of him. "A studio apartment in Flushing. You shop at discount stores and eat lunch from vending machines." Sarah's fingernails dug into her palms. Each word was a calculated blow, designed to humiliate, to diminish. Around her, the executives watched with the detached interest of people viewing a nature documentary, curious but uninvested in the prey's fate. "You know what separates us, Miss Chen?" Hawthorne continued, now standing directly beside her. She could smell his cologne, something expensive and oppressive. "It's not just money, it's vision. It's pedigree. It's the ability to see the bigger picture instead of getting lost in insignificant details. You're a quality assurance analyst. Your job is to check boxes and file reports, not to question the decisions of your superiors. People's financial security isn't an insignificant detail," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper but carrying steel within it. Hawthorne laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "You're too poor to have an opinion that matters, Miss Chen. The only reason you're even in this room is because of some misguided diversity initiative. We needed to check a box, Asian female, low income, public school. Congratulations, you're a statistic." The room fell silent except for the rain against the windows. Sarah felt as if she'd been stripped naked in front of a crowd, every insecurity and struggle of her life laid bare for their amusement. Her eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "Now," Hawthorne returned to his seat, smoothing his tie, If you're quite finished wasting everyone's time, I believe you have some test scripts to run. That is, after all, what we pay you your modest salary to do. Sarah's hands shook as she disconnected her laptop. The presentation she'd worked on for weeks, the evidence she'd painstakingly gathered, the solutions she'd crafted, remained unviewed. As she gathered her things, she heard Victoria whisper to another executive, "I don't know why we even let them think they can sit at the grown-ups table." "Miss Chen!" Hawthorne called out as she reached the door. She turned, hope flickering briefly that perhaps he'd reconsidered. "Make sure you submit your report through the proper channels next time. 3 levels of management, as per protocol. We wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself like this again." Sarah nodded once, mechanically, and left the conference room. The elevator ride down felt endless. She passed through the marble lobby with its modern art installations and fresh flowers, a world of casual opulence that seemed to mock her very existence. The security guard, Marcus, gave her a sympathetic nod. He'd always been kind to her, perhaps recognizing a fellow struggler in the kingdom of the wealthy. Outside, the rain had intensified. Sarah couldn't afford an umbrella. Hers had broken last week, and she'd been waiting for payday to buy another. She stood under the building's awning for a moment, watching the city blur through water and unshed tears. Her phone buzzed, a text from her roommate asking if she could cover extra rent this month. Another buzz, a reminder that her student loan payment was due. A third, her mother asking if she could help with her father's medication costs. But as Sarah stood there, soaked by the rain that the awning couldn't quite deflect, something shifted inside her. The humiliation began to crystallize into something harder, sharper. Hawthorne was wrong about one thing. Being poor hadn't made her opinions worthless. It had made them invaluable. She understood struggle. She understood systems. She understood how to make things work with almost nothing. And most importantly, she understood that Meridian Tech had just made a $42,000 a year enemy, with nothing left to lose. That night, in her studio apartment with its view of a brick wall and the constant hum of her neighbor's air conditioner, Sarah opened her laptop. The duct tape held. The screen flickered but steadied. She began to type. Not a report this time, but a plan. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned to code on library computers and outdated equipment. She pulled up her analysis of Meridian's vulnerabilities, not just the ones she'd tried to present, but others she'd discovered and kept to herself, knowing they'd never listen. She opened another window, this one showing her modest savings account. $42,000 a year didn't leave much room for extras, but Sarah had always been good at making do with less. She'd saved every penny she could, living on ramen and hope. Then she opened a third window, one that most people in that conference room would have been shocked to see her access. It showed a portfolio of investments, patents, and digital assets held under various shell companies and trusts. Sarah Chen, the girl too poor to have an opinion, had been building something in the shadows. Every night after her QA shifts, every weekend while her peers were brunching in Williamsburg, she'd been creating, investing, leveraging her technical knowledge in ways Meridian Tech couldn't imagine. The rain continued to fall against her single window, but Sarah no longer heard it. She was calculating, planning, preparing. In the reflection of her laptop screen, her face was transformed. No longer the humiliated junior analyst, but something altogether more dangerous. A woman with brilliance, opportunity, and absolutely nothing left to prove to anyone but herself. As dawn broke over Queens, painting the brick wall outside her window a pale gold, Sarah sent a single email. The recipient was a name that would have made Richard Hawthorne's hands shake had he known. The subject line was simple: Meridian Tech Acquisition. Interested? Then she closed her laptop, set her alarm for 2 hours of sleep, and prepared for what would be her last day as someone too poor to have an opinion. Tomorrow, she thought as exhaustion finally claimed her. Tomorrow, everything changes. The last thing she remembered before sleep took her was Hawthorne's voice. "You're too poor to have an opinion." In her dreams, she whispered back, "We'll see about that." Sarah's alarm pierced through her exhaustion at 6:47 a.m., exactly 2 hours after she'd fallen asleep. Her body protested as she forced herself upright, muscles stiff from tension and too little rest. The studio apartment felt smaller than usual, its walls pressing in with the weight of what she was about to do. She made instant coffee in the microwave. Her coffee maker had broken months ago, and checked her phone. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages. Her email inbox showed 127 new messages. The first voicemail was from her contact at Blackstone Equity. "Sarah, call me immediately if this intel is accurate." The message cut off, replaced by another, then another. Investment firms, hedge funds, private equity giants. Word had spread through the financial ecosystem like wildfire. Sarah allowed herself exactly 30 seconds to savor the moment, then switched into the mode that had carried her from a childhood in her parents' struggling restaurant to the halls of Meridian Tech, pure, focused execution. She dressed carefully, the same blazer from yesterday, but this time she didn't hide the frayed edge. Let them see where she came from. Her phone rang as she was applying drugstore mascara. The caller ID made her pause. David Kim, her mentor from City College, now a senior partner at Quantum Ventures. Sarah. His voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the excitement beneath. I just got off a conference call with our board. That vulnerability assessment you sent. Is it comprehensive? Every line of code, every system integration point, Sarah confirmed, tucking the phone between her shoulder and ear as she gathered her materials. 3 years of documentation, David. They never restricted my access because they never thought I mattered enough to be a threat. The consortium is prepared to move forward, but they need to meet with you. Today. Can you— I'll be at Meridian in an hour, Sarah interrupted. I need to maintain appearances for a few more hours. Sarah, David's voice softened. I heard about what happened yesterday. The security footage from the conference room. Someone leaked it to our team. I'm sorry you had to endure that. Don't be sorry, Sarah replied, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. It was the push I needed. The subway ride to Manhattan felt different this morning. Sarah stood among the morning commuters, teachers, nurses, construction workers, all the people Richard Hawthorne would consider too poor to have opinions, and felt a kinship she'd never noticed before. These were her people, the ones who kept the city running while the Richard Hawthornes of the world took credit for it. Her phone buzzed constantly. She ignored most messages but responded to a select few, coordinating a dance that had been years in the making. What Hawthorne and his executives hadn't known was that Sarah Chen wasn't just a QA analyst. She was a ghost in their machine, a silent observer who had spent 3 years documenting every weakness, every shortcut, every place where Meridian Tech had chosen profit over protocol. More importantly, she was the anonymous developer behind SecureShield, a security software suite that had quietly become industry standard for protecting against exactly the vulnerabilities she'd discovered in Meridian's systems. The patents alone were worth millions, but Sarah had kept her identity hidden, operating through a web of LLCs and trust funds managed by David's firm. She'd lived like a pauper while building an empire in the shadows, waiting for the right moment. Yesterday's humiliation had provided that moment. Marcus, the security guard, greeted her with his usual warmth as she entered Meridian's lobby. Morning, Miss Chen. Rough day yesterday? It's about to get better, Marcus, she said, meaning it. You might want to update your resume. Just a friendly suggestion. His eyes widened, but before he could respond, Sarah was already at the elevators. She rode up to the 15th floor. QA was kept far from the executive suites, naturally, and made her way to her cubicle. It was a gray box barely large enough for her desk and chair, surrounded by the constant hum of computers and the chatter of her colleagues. Sarah! Her desk neighbor, Jamie, popped his head over the partition. Girl, everyone saw the video. I can't believe Hawthorne said that to you. Are you okay? I'm fine, Sarah said, booting up her workstation. Actually, I'm better than fine. She spent the next 2 hours going through the motions of her job, running test scripts, filing reports that would never be read, playing the part of the cowed employee. But beneath her desk, her personal laptop was open, and she was orchestrating the financial equivalent of a surgical strike. At 10:47 a.m., her phone rang. Not her personal phone, her desk phone, the one that barely ever rang. Quality assurance. Sarah Chen speaking. Miss Chen, please report to the executive conference room immediately. The voice belonged to Hawthorne's assistant, and it carried a note of barely concealed panic. Sarah took her time. She stopped by the bathroom, washed her hands, checked her reflection. The woman looking back at her wasn't the same one who'd been humiliated 20 hours ago. This one had steel in her spine and secrets in her smile. The executive floor was in chaos. Assistants ran between offices, phones rang incessantly, and through the glass walls, Sarah could see executives huddled in frantic conversation. She walked through it all with serene calm, her cheap flats clicking against marble that cost more per square foot than her monthly rent. The conference room, the same one where she'd been humiliated, was packed. Not just with Meridian's executives, but with people she recognized from the business news, lawyers, board members, major shareholders. And at the center of it all, Richard Hawthorne stood with his face the color of ash. "Ah, Miss Chen," he said as she entered. The condescension from yesterday was gone, replaced by something that might have been fear. "Please, have a seat." "I'll stand," Sarah said simply. A woman in an impeccable suit stepped forward. "Miss Chen, I'm Margaret Walsh, Meridian Tech's chief legal counsel. We need to discuss the communication you sent to various investment firms last night. Which communication? Sarah asked innocently. The comprehensive vulnerability assessment that your CEO dismissed yesterday? The one that details how Meridian Tech's new software update will expose 17 million customers to identity theft? Or the patent infringement analysis showing how your revolutionary security features actually violate 12 of my personally held patents? The room erupted. Board members shouted over each other. Lawyers frantically checked their phones. And through it all, Hawthorne stared at Sarah like he was seeing her for the first time. Your patents? He said weakly. Sarah pulled out her phone, its cracked screen a testament to her frugal lifestyle. Secure Shield Technologies. You might recognize the name. After all, your enterprise division has been trying to license our software for 2 years. We've turned you down each time because, frankly, we had concerns about your company's ethical standards. This is corporate espionage, Margaret Walsh interjected. You used your position here to do my job? Sarah interrupted. I reported vulnerabilities through proper channels. I was told my opinion didn't matter because I was too poor. Fine. But the 16 investment firms currently reviewing Meridian's technical infrastructure seem to think my opinion matters quite a bit. Victoria Ashworth, the CTO who'd mocked her for taking the subway, leaned forward. What do you want? Money? A promotion? Name your price. Sarah almost laughed. Even now, they thought this was about money. What I want, she said slowly, is what I've always wanted. For this company to take security seriously. For the people who actually understand the technology to be heard. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up with a smile that made Hawthorne step back. Excuse me, I need to take this. She answered the call on speaker. David? Sarah, the consortium has agreed to your terms. Full acquisition of Meridian Tech at 30% below market value, contingent on the vulnerability assessment. The SEC has been notified about the security flaws, and trading has been halted pending investigation. Congratulations. You now own 53% of Meridian Tech through the acquisition vehicle. The room fell silent. Someone dropped a coffee mug. It shattered on the marble floor with a sound like breaking dreams. Hawthorne's voice cracked. That's impossible. The market cap. Billions. You make $42,000 a year. $42,000 from you, Sarah corrected. But Secure Shield's government contracts alone generated 8 figures last year. The predictive AI algorithm I developed, the one your team said was too complex for practical application when I suggested it as an intern, Microsoft licensed it for their cloud infrastructure. And those insignificant details I kept pointing out, I've been consulting for your competitors, helping them avoid the mistakes you insisted on making. She moved to the windows, looking out at the rain-washed city below. You were so focused on my salary, my apartment, my subway card, that you never wondered why someone with my skills stayed in a job that paid so little. You never asked why I worked late every night, why I had access to systems beyond my pay grade, why I understood your infrastructure better than your own CTO. The board won't approve this, someone said weakly. The board doesn't have a choice, Margaret Walsh said, her face pale as she scrolled through legal documents on her tablet. The vulnerability disclosure triggered the catastrophic failure clause in our insurance policies, the shareholder lawsuits alone, and with the SEC investigation. Sarah turned back to face them. I stayed because I believed in what this company could be. I submitted report after report, trying to fix things from the inside. And every time I was dismissed, ignored, humiliated. Yesterday was just the last straw. So this is revenge? Hawthorne asked. No, Sarah said simply. This is business. You taught me that opinions are like luxury cars. Not everyone can afford them. Well, I just bought the whole dealership. Her phone rang again. This time it was the Wall Street Journal, then CNN, then TechCrunch. The story was out. A junior QA analyst had just engineered one of the most stunning corporate takeovers in tech history. Now, Sarah said, addressing the room with the quiet authority of someone who no longer needed to shout to be heard. Let's discuss transitions. Mr. Hawthorne, your resignation letter should be on my desk within the hour. Victoria, you'll stay on for 2 weeks to ensure a smooth handover to my incoming CTO. The rest of you will meet with the transition team to determine if you have a future with the new Meridian Tech. You can't do this, Hawthorne said, but the fight had gone out of him. I already have, Sarah replied. Oh, and Richard? That yacht crew you mentioned yesterday? The one you tip more than my annual salary? You might want to let them know you'll be cutting back. I hear the job market for former CEOs who tank their company's valuations is pretty tough. But hey, she smiled, the same cold smile he'd given her yesterday. I'm sure your opinion on that matters to someone. After all, you can afford it. For now. She walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. Marcus Williams, the security guard downstairs, he's getting a promotion. It turns out the people you dismiss as beneath notice often see everything that matters. You just have to be smart enough to listen. As she left the conference room, Sarah heard the chaos resume behind her. Lawyers shouting about litigation strategies, board members demanding explanations, the death rattle of the old Meridian Tech. But she didn't look back. She had work to do. Real work. The kind that protected people's data and respected the opinions of everyone, regardless of their bank account. In the elevator, her reflection caught her eye again. Same secondhand blazer, same frayed edge, same woman who'd been told she was too poor to have an opinion. The only thing that had changed was that now, everyone knew what she'd always known. Wealth wasn't measured in dollars alone. Sometimes the richest person in the room was the one who understood the value of every voice, every perspective, every detail that others dismissed as beneath their notice. As the elevator descended, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Saw the news? Your father and I are proud of you. Will you still come for dinner Sunday? For the first time in 24 hours, Sarah felt tears threaten. She typed back, wouldn't miss it. I'll bring dessert from that expensive bakery Dad likes. We can afford it now. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, where a crowd of reporters waited. But before she faced them, Sarah had one last call to make. She dialed a number she knew by heart. Jamie? It's Sarah. Remember that startup idea you pitched me last month? The one about making enterprise software accessible to small businesses? I'd like to discuss funding it. Oh, and Jamie, you're getting a raise. Turns out your opinion matters quite a bit. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of legal documents, press conferences, and 16-hour days that made Sarah's old QA shifts seem leisurely by comparison. But unlike before, when she'd fueled herself with vending machine coffee and desperation, now she had a purpose that energized her beyond mere caffeine. She was rebuilding Meridian Tech from the ground up, and every decision she made rippled through the lives of 12,000 employees. Sarah had kept her studio apartment in Queens. The media found this detail particularly fascinating. The new CEO, worth hundreds of millions, still living in a 400-square-foot walk-up with unreliable hot water. What they didn't understand was that the apartment had become her anchor, a daily reminder of where she came from and why she was doing this. It was 5:23 a.m. on a Tuesday when her phone rang. Sarah was already awake, reviewing integration reports at her small dining table that doubled as a desk. The caller ID showed her new CFO, Amara Okafor, whom she'd recruited from a nonprofit that specialized in financial literacy for underserved communities. Sarah, we have a problem. Amara's voice was tense. 3 major clients are threatening to pull their contracts. They're concerned about the leadership transition. Which clients? Sarah asked, already pulling up the relevant files on her laptop. Steinberg Financial, Apex Solutions, and Greyhawk Industries. Combined, they represent 12% of our revenue. Sarah knew these companies well. Their executives had all been at that fateful meeting 6 weeks ago, chuckling along with Hawthorne's cruelty. Schedule a meeting for this afternoon. Their offices, not ours. I'll handle it personally. Sarah, you don't have to. Yes, I do, Sarah interrupted gently. This is about more than contracts. It's about changing how business is done. By 2 p.m., Sarah stood in the opulent offices of Steinberg Financial, facing a room full of executives who looked at her with barely concealed skepticism. Gerald Steinberg himself, a man who'd built his fortune on traditional values and old boy networks, didn't bother to stand when she entered. Miss Chen, he said, deliberately using Miss instead of Ms. We appreciate you coming, but our concerns remain. Meridian Tech was a stable partner under Richard Hawthorne. This upheaval you've caused makes us question the company's future direction. Sarah set her battered laptop on the conference table, the duct tape visible to everyone. She saw some executives exchange amused glances. Good. Let them underestimate her one more time. Mr. Steinberg, I understand your concerns, she began, her voice calm. Change is uncomfortable, especially when it challenges how things have always been done. But let me show you something. She pulled up a presentation, not the slick, professionally designed slideshows they were used to, but a simple, data-rich display that cut straight to the point. 6 weeks ago, your firm was paying Meridian Tech $3.2 million annually for cybersecurity services that left you exposed to 17 critical vulnerabilities. Your client data, including the personal information of 300,000 high-net-worth individuals, was one discovered exploit away from being compromised. The room shifted uncomfortably. Gerald's face reddened. Hawthorne assured us. Hawthorne assured you of many things, Sarah continued. He was very good at assurance, less good at actual security. In the past 6 weeks, my team has patched every one of those vulnerabilities. We've implemented secure shield protocols that reduce your exposure by 94%. We've done this while cutting your costs by 18% through efficiency improvements. She clicked to the next slide. But this isn't just about technology. It's about philosophy. Under my leadership, Meridian Tech promotes talent based on ability, not pedigree. We listen to the people actually doing the work, not just those with corner offices. That upheaval you're worried about? It's the sound of competence replacing complacency. You're asking us to trust a company run by someone with no executive experience, another board member interjected. Someone who, forgive me for saying, doesn't understand how business is done at this level. Sarah smiled. It was the same smile she'd worn while surviving on ramen, while coding through the night, while enduring 1,000 small humiliations from people who thought poverty made her invisible. You're right. I don't understand business as you do it, she agreed. I don't understand paying millions for systems that don't work because the sales rep had the right college connections. I don't understand dismissing brilliant ideas because they come from someone who takes the subway. I don't understand valuing appearance over competence, pedigree over performance, comfort over security. She pulled up another screen, this one showing Meridian Tech's performance metrics for the past 6 weeks. But I do understand this. Our response time to threats has decreased by 60%. Employee satisfaction is up 40%. We've attracted top talent from Google, Microsoft, and Apple. People who want to work for a company that values what they can do, not where they came from. Our stock price has increased by 22% since the acquisition. Gerald Steinberg leaned back in his chair, studying her with newfound interest. And if we decide to stay with Meridian, then you get the best cybersecurity in the industry, delivered by people who actually understand the threats you face, Sarah said simply. You get a partner who will tell you uncomfortable truths instead of comfortable lies. You get innovation driven by merit, not nepotism. And if we leave, Sarah shrugged, then you go back to the old way of doing things. You pay more for less, surround yourself with yes men who went to the right schools, and hope that when the next major breach happens, it hits your competitors first. Your choice. The room fell silent. Sarah began packing up her laptop, the duct tape catching the light from the crystal chandelier overhead. As she reached the door, Gerald's voice stopped her. Miss Chen. Sarah, he corrected himself. The contract stays, but I have one condition. Sarah turned, eyebrow raised. I want you to speak to my leadership team. About, he gestured vaguely, struggling with words that didn't come naturally to him, about seeing things differently, about listening to people we might have overlooked. It was a small victory, but Sarah had learned that small victories, accumulated over time, could topple empires. The pattern repeated over the following weeks. Each meeting, each confrontation, each skeptical executive forced to confront the reality that competence came in packages they'd been trained to ignore. But the real changes were happening inside Meridian Tech itself. Sarah had promoted Marcus, the security guard, to head of physical security. His first insight, that the executive floor's security was actually the weakest in the building because rich people didn't like being inconvenienced, had prevented a potential corporate espionage incident within his first week. Jamie from QA was now leading the new small business initiative, developing affordable security solutions for startups and family businesses. His enthusiasm was infectious, and his understanding of budget constraints, born from his own struggles, made him uniquely qualified to serve that market. The old executive floor had been transformed. Corner offices were converted into collaborative spaces. The executive dining room now served the same food as the employee cafeteria. Sarah had discovered that equality tasted a lot like reasonably priced sandwiches and honest conversation. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Sarah was reviewing code in her new office. She'd chosen a modest space on the engineering floor rather than Hawthorne's palatial suite, when her assistant knocked. Sarah, Victoria Ashworth is here. She says it's urgent. Victoria entered, looking diminished. Her designer suit was immaculate as always, but there was desperation in her eyes that no amount of expensive tailoring could hide. Sarah, she began without preamble. I need this job. I know I was cruel to you. I know I was part of the problem, but I have 2 kids in private school, a mortgage that requires you to maintain a certain lifestyle. Sarah finished. I understand. Do you? Victoria's voice cracked. Do you understand what it's like to lose everything you've worked for? Sarah leaned back in her chair, a standard office chair. Nothing special because comfort shouldn't be a luxury reserved for executives. I understand what it's like to never have it in the first place, to be brilliant and capable and have doors slammed in your face because you don't fit the mold. So, yes, Victoria, I understand loss. I understand fear. I understand doing whatever it takes to survive. Then you'll let me stay? That depends, Sarah said carefully. Can you learn? Can you see past the surface? Can you value an idea from a junior developer as much as one from a VP? Can you take the subway without feeling like it diminishes you? Victoria's face cycled through emotions: pride, anger, desperation, and finally, something that might have been understanding. I can try. Then you can stay, Sarah decided. But not as CTO. You'll work under Jamie in the Small Business Initiative. You'll learn what it's like to build solutions for people who can't afford to waste money on status symbols. You'll ride the subway. You'll eat lunch from food trucks. You'll remember what it's like to have your ideas dismissed until you prove their worth. That's humiliating. No, Sarah corrected. What you did to me was humiliating. This is education. Take it or leave it. Victoria took it. As the weeks turned into months, Meridian Tech's transformation became a case study in business schools, though Sarah noted with irony that many of those same schools had rejected her application years ago. The company that had once embodied everything wrong with corporate culture was becoming a beacon for what it could be. But the real test came on a rain-soaked Thursday that reminded Sarah viscerally of that day 6 months ago when everything changed. She was in a client meeting when Amara burst in, face grave.